Episode 21. Hello, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Dogman Encounters Radio. I'm Vic Cundiff, and I'll be your host as we listen to eyewitness encounters involving one of the most terrifying cryptids, dogmen. I received an interesting email that is a little different in the fact that this eyewitness didn't actually see what was making the noise that she heard this particular night, that quite possibly could have been a dog man. But nonetheless, it's a very interesting story that I wanted to share with you. The story reads, and I quote, "Hi, I wasn't sure whether to report this to you or not, as it was so long ago, but I can promise you every word is true. I didn't see a dog man, but I'm convinced, having read articles from your website, that I definitely heard one. I was about 13 or 14 at the time, so it was back in 1981 or 82. The previous weekend, my friends and I had watched An American Werewolf in London on video for my birthday. Werewolves had always fascinated and frightened me, so I pestered my parents to let me watch that video for my birthday get-together with my friends. I remember it scaring me in parts, but the thing that got to me the most was the howling noise it made when in the underground tunnel just before it attacked the man on the escalator. A few weeks after watching the video, my friend and I were walking to the youth club at Clow Hall School in Kids Grove, which was just over a mile or so from our homes. If the weather was okay, we would always walk to the club and then our parents would pick us up. It was a very dry, clear night, very cold but no wind, etc. It would have been sometime around 6:30 p.m. We were busy talking, probably about boys or something, and we had just gotten to the part of the footpath where the houses had ended and the road went over a disused railway line with a tunnel further up the track. The track is down below you at this point, by the way. I then heard a far-off but definite howl. I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up, and I remember feeling very uncomfortable. I had stopped talking and was just listening for the noise again at this point. My friend was still talking. I asked her if she had heard anything, and she said, "Heard what?" I was convinced it was just my imagination and shrugged it off. We walked further and carried on talking. I heard the same howl again, but this time much closer. I looked at my friend and said, "Tell me you heard that." She had gone quiet. We looked at each other and she said, "Yes." We both stopped talking but carried on walking, albeit slightly quicker. I still remember how it made me feel. My heart was pounding, and I remember looking round but could see nothing. The footpath now had woods either side of it. It didn't sound like any dog I had ever heard, and it certainly wasn't a fox. It sounded exactly the same as the howling noise from the film. My friend said, "I think we should walk a bit faster." I said, "I think we better run," and we did. We ran as fast as we could, all the time hearing the howls, and they were getting closer each time we heard them. We sprinted the whole length of that path, which must have been a quarter of a mile, and I was terrified the whole time. We came to the end of the path, out to where it joined the main road. As we did, whatever it was howled again, and it sounded as though it was right behind us. We didn't stop running until we got to the youth club. Just thinking about it now still gives me the chills, and to this day I hate going out in the dark. I've never heard anything like it since, and to my knowledge, no one else has ever heard anything either. I really have no idea what it was, and I never saw anything, but my gut feeling tells me it could have been a dog man, even though there are none reported here in the UK. End of quote. I hate to break the bad news to you, but there are. Tonight's guest is Larry Parker. Larry is a Vietnam vet with 6 years' experience in the Navy, including 2 of those years spent with the Marine Recon Unit. Larry lives in northern Michigan and is an avid outdoorsman. One day while hunting with his best friend Dave, he had a chilling dogman encounter. He's here to share the details of that encounter with you tonight. Larry, welcome to Dogman Encounters Radio. Experience out to where it joined said, "Tell me you heard that." She had gone quiet. We ran as fast as we could, anything either. Larry lives in Northern K. Tonight's guest is Larry Parker. Larry is a Vietnam vet with 6 years experience in the Navy, including 2 of those years spent with the Marine Recon Unit. Larry lives in northern Michigan and is an avid outdoorsman. One day while hunting with his best friend Dave, he had a chilling dogman encounter. He's here to share the details of that encounter with you tonight. Larry, welcome to Dogman Encounters Radio. Thanks so much for coming.
I'm glad to be here, Vic.
Please give us a brief bio on yourself.
I was born in December of 1955. I'm not a young buck anymore. I'm closer to 60 than 50. Ex-military. I did 6 years in the United States Navy. Some of that was with the Marine Recon Unit. I've lived in northern Michigan for the past 24 years and grew up in Michigan, lived in rural Michigan all my life, grew up on a lake. I'm a mechanic in the turf industry. I've been in that for the last 23 years, and I work on all the specialty equipment that they use on golf courses.
Interesting. Please tell us about your experience in the woods, Larry. I know that you've spent a lot of time out there, but what did you do while you were out there?
Oh, when I'm out in the woods, I check for all kinds of different things. Normally, you listen for your crows, your blue jays, squirrels, birds. You look for tracks to see what type of animals are running through. I hunt morel mushrooms. I hunt big game here in Michigan. And, you just familiarize yourself with what natural woods are like. Areas where you find no wildlife, that's areas of concern.
Talking about the areas of no wildlife, it's not unusual for people that run into dogmen to report that they experienced a strange silence that fell over the woods. That's something that seems to almost always happen right before an encounter takes place.
Yes, it was the same thing with my encounter. And where we had the encounter at was an area we were setting up for hunting. We had ridden in and found this area. When I first started going back there to play bait, it always disturbed me because it was so silent.
Oh, I believe it. That's a very common phenomenon. It's hard to understand, but happens all the time. I know that your friend Dave, who was with you that day when you had your encounter, I know that Dave had some strange goings-on that happened at his property before you had this encounter. Please tell us about that.
Well, Dave and Trina were going shopping one evening, and they called up over at the farm. Dave asked me if I could come over and watch his two girls. And, to be honest, the girls were old enough to watch themselves. And I agreed to it. We went over there, and Dave had his weapons out. He has a few pistols and some long guns, and he was just really nervous. And I said, Dave, what you got all the weapons out? He said, oh, just in case you do it. And he kind of just shrugged it off. And they left, and the oldest daughter, Britta, she said, there's something that's coming around here. And I figured, oh, probably just coyote, maybe they saw a wolf or something. I told her, I said, look, everything's fine. I said, I can use any one of these weapons. I said, how could I shoot? I said, you're all right. And Britta said, we just didn't want to be alone. So I could kind of understand that. It's two young girls that don't really venture into the woods, that are living in the woods, and they're from suburban Detroit. And I completely understand how they felt. So I didn't notice anything going on. Didn't hear anything that night that I was there. It wasn't until actually a few weeks later on that everything came forward.
Please tell us about the area where this encounter took place. I know that it took place across the road from where Dave lives, but give us the layout of the land.
Well, it's mixed hardwoods and swamp. There's pine also, and we were, from Dave's house, we were in probably maybe 2.5 miles back, right on the boundary of state-owned land and privately owned land. And we got permission from the landowner to use their property to hunt on. It was thick, dense, and then you get into areas where it was a little more open, but we kept skirting that swamp. So when we came across the game trails that we found, and it was kind of active recently, I looked at the deer tracks on it and everything, and that's all I saw was deer. I figured, I said, Dave, I said, we can hunt here. I think this is a good area. And then again, I noticed that there was no birds or anything when we were looking around the area, deciding what we were going to do there. And we went ahead and we built our ground blinds out of natural sticks and everything that were laying on the ground. And that whole time back in there, it was quiet. It was strange. I'm game for adventure. I like going into different areas and hunt and testing my skills as a woodsman. But this was just strange. It was just the strangest place I'd ever been in. And it was mixed. You could see the swamp, and you were on the hardwoods and pines. You know, it's a beautiful area.
Sounds like it was a really pretty area. Pretty, but awfully creepy, it sounds like.
Yeah, and I would venture to say it's an area that I probably would not go back into.
Well, I could definitely understand that, especially after what happened to you. Let's jump right into your encounter. Please tell us all about what happened.
Well, Dave and I were bow hunting in October, and we decided that rifle season was about a month away, and we wanted to go in deep enough to where we could actually get some sizable game that not too many people would have the nerve to trek back into, because most hunters only hunt within a half mile from their vehicle. Here in northern Michigan, now opening day of rifle season, the Orange Army is just unreal. So we went and we scouted. We actually took horses and went in on horseback initially. And we found the area that we wanted to hunt. It was mixed woods and good game trail, like I said earlier. So we figured we need to find a two-track to come back into. And a two-track is like a little vehicle path that goes through the woods up here. We found a two-track and rode it out, and then rode back up the main highway and back to his property. And at the time, I had a little 89 Toyota 4x4, and we put bags of apples and carrots in it, and we went back there and we scattered it in the area. We don't put a pile out there, scatter the bait. As a hunter, I feel hunting off a pile is relatively unethical. And so I went back there and I maintained the area and kept bait in the area for them. And every time I went back in there, it was like I felt like I was being watched. Something was there. And I'd taken binoculars with me, and I'd look through my binoculars and try and see what's going on. And I'd get up into the bed of my pickup and look. There's nothing I could see. There were times where I thought I saw something move, but then I didn't see anything. And so that's how we got into that area. Something had been eating the bait, and I figured it was deer, or maybe even not being on a swamp, possibly a bear coming in. That kind of a thing, I thought. And so, opening day of rifle season, we went back in there and hunted in the morning. And there wasn't much going on in the morning. I mean, not a blue jay, not a squirrel, not a crow, not a raven, nothing. And we went in the house and had our lunch, and we sat there and we discussed the area for a little bit. So that afternoon we went back out there into the new area. And Dave asked me prior to going back out there and prior to the morning hunt for me to bring a different kind of round with me, and it was ballistic tip round. And I had backup clips for my 30-06. It was semi-automatic, 3x9 by 40 millimeter scope on it. Really nice gun. And, you know, I'm thinking, well, sure, I'll bring it. I've hunted deer with these rounds. They're great. That afternoon, we went back out there, and it was about 4:30 in the evening. We got out there about 2, and I hadn't seen a thing. But I kept getting the feeling of being watched. I kept feeling the presence. And there were times where I thought I noticed movement in the area around me, and I looked where I thought I saw the movement, and there was nothing there. Well, I brought a binocular with me, like a small telescope with a filter on the thing, and I used that to pick up deer and everything because of how well camouflaged the deer are. And I still saw nothing. So I'm sitting there, and Dave comes over the headset, and he's, Larry, we got to go. We got to get out of here. We got to go now. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? And he says, I want you to put those other rounds in. And I said, okay. And he said, I'm coming to your blind. So I stepped down a little bit. I put on the Hunter orange vest for walking through the woods and everything. And I myself, I wear woodland camo when I hunt. It's my preference of hunting camouflage. Dave come up to the blind, and he said, are you ready to go? I said, not really. Why? He said, we got to get out of here now. So we started hoofing it, and we went a little ways. He said, did you put those rounds in? I said, no, not yet. He stopped, and I changed rounds. I ejected the current round out of the chamber, and I changed magazines and put one of the ballistic tip rounds in the chamber. And so Dave and I are getting ready to move, and I noticed Dave was staring, and I brought my 30-06 up, and I'm looking through the scope, and this creature stepped out from behind a maple tree. And I'm like, what in the hell is this? And I'm kind of looking at it, and instinct went to draw down on its chest. And I started getting this feeling like I was being threatened. So I pulled the trigger, and I brought the rifle down, and the creature was still standing there. I know I hit the creature. I turn, Dave's gone. I bring the rifle back up, look through the scope again, and this thing was definitely in a threatenative posture. It made itself look like it was, it was huge. I would say height-wise, it was probably 7, maybe 7.5 feet height. And I just instinctively pulled the trigger a second time. Only this time, I watched the bullet actually hit it in the chest. I saw a blood spray. Then I brought the rifle down, and I looked, and the creature was still standing there. Now, this creature was probably 200 yards away from me at this point, if not maybe a little further. And that's when I decided to hightail it, and it let out this freakish growl. Okay? And I made it back to Dave's house. It was dark when I got back there. Dave was in the house. He had the doors barricaded. He had stuff over the windows. And he had all of his weapons out. And it took me about 5 minutes to get Dave to let me in. At that point, with Dave, I said, what in God's name is going on? And Dave leveled with me. He said, this thing has been coming around the house for a couple weeks. He said, Larry, I set you up. He says, I know you can shoot it. He says, I didn't have the gunpowder you got. And he said, what do you think it is? I said, I can tell you what it's not. I said, it's not a bear. I said, I don't know what it is. So we talked for a little bit, and I went out to my truck and I left. About 2 in the morning, I get a phone call from Dave. He says, you got to come over here. He says, you're not going to believe what's happened. I said, oh, come on, man. It's 2 in the morning, Dave. He says, Larry, he says, I'm not pulling your leg or anything. He says, you got to get over here. He says, this thing came up. He says, and the horses they got attacked. The lean-to was tore up. And he says, you've sewn up the horses before. He says, bring your suture kit. Because I've got one of these packs that I've got ready. If I got to get up and go, I can get up and go. And a suture kit's part of my first aid kit in this pack. So I get over there, and I look at the horses, and I couldn't believe what I saw. You could actually see 4 distinct claw marks in the hind haunches of one, and 3 distinct claw marks in the neck of another. And I know from experience in studying big cats that this was not an attack by a big cat. Maybe on one horse, seeing how it was up by the neck. But on the rear haunches of the other one, I doubt it, because a big cat comes down from the top and attacks from behind. and it goes around the neck, and it goes to bite through the neck instead of the spinal cord to bring the animal down. That's how they take down an animal. But on top of this, the lean-to that he and I had built was just ripped to shreds. And, you know, I looked at Dave. I said, yeah, I can sew up your horses and that. I said, I can do that for you. I said, what has been going on? And they told me about it. Britta actually saw the thing looking in the window. And she said, Larry, it looked like a big wolf. She says, as a little girl, I remember the Little Red Riding story, she says, I seen in the books, and she says, it looked like a big wolf. And I said, okay, that's interesting. And within a couple of weeks, actually it was a week, Dave and Trina had packed up everything they owned, moved to Tennessee, and put their house up for sale because of it. Now, even today, when you go back into where their house is, you still have that feeling you're being watched. And it's dead quiet, like there's something there. And my wife and I went back there a little while ago, and we weren't even there 60 seconds. Didn't get out of the car or anything, and the wife said, we got to get out of here. I don't like it back here. She says, it feels creepy. She says, there's something watching. Nobody was there. So we left right away. I wanted to actually get out and see if I could find any claw marks in the uprights from what was left of the lean-to. And I just find the whole thing very, very mystifying that it's probably still there. You know, and this has been, 17 years ago that this creature forced these people out of their house.
Wow, that had to be quite the encounter to try and get over. As far as Dave, Trina, and yourself would go, have there been lingering nightmare issues and PTSD issues you've been dealing with?
Oh, I've been diagnosed with PTSD for quite some time. It has to do with what I did in the military. The stuff I did in the military is highly classified. I went to Vietnam, the end of Vietnam, and when our president said we're not sending people in, they would send us in. And I've never been allowed to reveal anything that I did. But that's where my PTSD came in. And, you know, it may be that my training and what I went through might be the reason I'm still alive.
You are not the average Dogman Encounter eyewitness. That goes without saying. If it had to happen to someone, I'm so glad that you did have the training that you obviously brought to the table. That's about the only good thing that can be said about that. Moving forward, what do you have to say about people that go out actively looking for dogmen, knowing now what you know about them?
This is a creature of unknown strength, unknown capabilities, unknown temperament, and they've got to leave it alone. They're messing with a hornet's nest is what they're doing.
Oh, I'd say they are. How good of a shot are you, Larry?
Let's put it this way. My record speaks for itself, and in the United States Navy, I experted out in marksmanship of both small arms and long rifle.
Wow, that's really impressive. I heard you say that you specifically hit it in the chest with the second shot that you fired, but with the first shot, is that where it hit as well?
That's where I was aiming at, was right dead in the chest. The type of round I use will disintegrate a Chevy engine block. And I had shot deer with it, and it makes a mess out of a deer when you shoot a deer with it. And I figured that round would be a down-and-out round, but it had no real effect on this creature. I mean, it apparently went, it just passed through it, is what I think.
That's a scary thought. When you were out there and Dave asked you to put the magazine with the ballistic tip ammunition into your 30-06, did that throw up some serious red flags, making you wonder what in the world was really going on, or what?
Yeah, there was some real serious flags that went up the minute he mentioned me bringing them. And he kind of blew it off to me as, well, look how dense it is out there. You might want to just take those. You might see a deer in down deep in the swamp. And he says, those rounds will go through a tree. And he says, it'll take down a deer. He says, I've seen you do it. And so I figured, well, yeah. And then when he was in panic mode, as I put it, I mean, the man was as white as a sheet of paper. That's when I really got suspicious. And when he finally broke down and told me he was setting me up to take this creature down, I knew then that he had seen it, he had encountered it, and was terrified of it.
When you found out that he had set you up for this encounter because he didn't feel as if he was capable of handling this on his own, did that put a strain on your relationship after the fact?
Yeah, and I was kind of glad that they moved to Tennessee because, it made me feel like he could trade it for us. Had I known that he wanted really to try to hunt this thing down and go in there with high-powered rifles, that would have been a whole different story. I mean, I'd have used a different rifle that was a bigger caliber and harder punching. And it just kind of puzzled me on why he didn't want to be on the up and up with me about this.
Well, I can understand when you figure the reaction you would get from most people. I guess I can kind of understand why he didn't come out and tell you what the real reason was for him taking you back there, but still, that's obviously not the way to handle that. If he was going to put you in a situation like that, the least he could do would be to let you know what you were dealing with, so like you said, you could come equipped with a heavier caliber rifle with the proper type of ammunition to give both of you the best chance of walking out of there that day.
Yeah, that I wished he'd have done, but what I really wish I would have done was gone back into that area and looked for hair and blood. If I knew today what I knew then, I would have gone back to look for hair and blood. And I would have took the samples and I'd have kept it as contaminant-free as possible. Because I want to know what this thing really is.
Well, it's probably fortunate, in my opinion, that you didn't know about DNA back then, because if you had gone back there, I can't see any situation where Dave would have been with you. If you would have gone back there alone to look for that evidence, there's a strong possibility that you wouldn't be here today, unfortunately.
Well, something like that, I'd have taken a couple of 40-round magazines in my SKS and would have installed a Hellfire trigger system on it. That way I would have had enough rounds to cut it in half.
One thing to keep in mind too, Larry, is sometimes these things don't travel alone. They travel in packs. While you were out there and you saw that dog man, did you ever get the impression that it might not have been alone? It might have had company.
Yeah, I did, because when Dave was telling us we had to go, there was something around me. And what I've studied on wolf behavior is that before a wolf comes in on a kill, it circles its prey. Knowing that today, it makes sense that there were probably two of them. And what I think happened is when I shot the one, I think the other one might have gone to its aid. What went on that night from dark till I got over there at their house, I think it was more of an act of revenge. And I believe it was plain and simple a warning, okay, you've hurt one of us, we're going to maim or kill one of you.
Yeah, that could definitely be the case. They do seem to have a vengeance factor like no other, so I wouldn't be surprised if that did happen, if that's how it played out. That day when that encounter happened, Larry, was Dave so shook up that, in your opinion, he would have been unable to help you defend yourselves, or do you think he would have been able to help out firing at this dog man or these dog men if they would have attacked you that day in the woods?
Well, Dave had his 30-30 Winchester with him, and he did chamber around, and he wasn't an ex-cop, so I'm hoping he would have had my back. I think if he knew I was just out there by myself and there were more than one, that, yes, he would have had my back on that. But, the fact still remains that you're right. They travel in pairs or 3 or 4. You don't really know how many there are when you see one. You could see the one, and there'd be 2 coming up on your back fixing to take your head off.
That is a scary thought, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a very sobering thought. And today when I go out, and in the spring we have morel mushrooms come up. If I go out mushroom hunting, even today I take a rifle with me. And it's just knowing what I know. And it's knowing the areas that I go in and the feelings I get. Recently, my wife and I went into an area, and I put it out on the internet. We had an encounter with something out there. I'm not quite sure what it was. And in one of the photographs, you could almost make out a creature kind of camouflaged by the shadows. So I know there's a lot up here. And this area that we went over by was by the Manistee River, and legend has it that it all began over by the Manistee River.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me. I know there's been no shortage of action with dogmen by the Manistee. It's unfortunate that you had to find out the hard way about their presence, though. Changing topics here, you mentioned that you already had lingering PTSD issues from your experience in the military, but have there been problems with nightmares and so on directly related to that encounter that you had as well?
I've had, I wouldn't really call them nightmares. I've had dreams that have woken me up and I've been in a sweat. But the one dream that I keep having that reoccurs is where it's looking in my bedroom window. That's the one and only dream that really reoccurs that bothers me. They did a sleep study on me because I was having problems sleeping, and they found out my brain don't shut down. And I think that's due to the reason of that encounter in the woods. I think my subconscious has stayed on high alert for all these years.
How far do you live from where that encounter took place?
Oh, let me think here. I live about 9 miles from it.
9 miles. Understand, I'm not sure if you knew about this, but just in case you didn't, I want to bring something to your attention. There's a strange phenomenon where these things, it's not uncommon for them to follow eyewitnesses home, where someone will see one, and then normally before too much time has elapsed, they'll see that one or one like it around their home. Do you think that maybe that's kind of coming into play here, where it might have followed you home somehow?
Well, at the time that this happened, I owned a 40-acre farm on Pipe Lake Road. And ironically enough, that farm's about 2 miles from where I'm sitting right now. And nothing came up and really bothered my animals or chickens or anything. But I think part of the reason it didn't follow me to my home was the fact I was in a vehicle. And I believe that the traffic on this 131 is heavy enough that it covered my track and it couldn't send me. That's kind of what I believe. There's no doubt in my mind that something followed us to Dave's house. I had that whole feeling that something was following when I was going through the woods back to his house. And when I left, I felt like there was something out there. But as to whether or not, it wanted to bring revenge against, let's call myself the trigger man, or against Dave, I have a feeling that Dave might have done something prior to this that brought all of this on. But to this day, I don't know what that might have been.
I hope he didn't do anything foolish that might have brought that on. Speaking of Dave's house, Larry, you mentioned when you went back there with your wife to take a look around, within 60 seconds you got that strange feeling and everything. What's the history of that house or that property after that encounter, after Dave and Trina sold it and moved off? Do you know if anyone ever did wind up moving back into it, or did it just lay vacant?
Well, somebody had brought in a great big mobile home, and the day we were back there was nobody there. And I still don't really see any movement of trash. From what I understand, the property is sold and resold multiple times.
Well, I can definitely understand why that happened.
I don't know. I haven't taken the time really to find out who bought it, track them down, and interview them to see if they had any occurrences back in there. And I think that's something I'm going to have to go to the county clerk and look up and find out and maybe make some phone calls.
After what happened that one day, I'd be astonished if anyone that moves into that property did not have problems. So that would just make sense that it would be hard for anyone to stay there for any period of time. Now, shifting gears for a little bit, Larry, when Dave approached your blind that day when you were out there hunting, did he ever come clean on that and admit that maybe he had seen that dog man and that's why all of a sudden out of the blue he was in so much of a hurry to get out of there?
No, he just kept saying that there's something out here, And I don't know, I'd never really seen Dave terror struck until then. So I don't know what was all going on. Just like I said a little bit ago, I do need to know what he did. Because there might be a way to remedy it and to calm the area down again.
Well, I wouldn't count on that too much. I don't know of any instances where something like that's happened and anyone's been able to squash things to the point where an area was safe to go into again. For some period of time, I think that area is going to be an off-limits type of place.
Well, today, so many years later, that whole area has been cabled off with steel posts and a 1-inch steel cable blocking your way in there, and it's posted no trespass. So somebody knows something's up and they know it's coming out of that area.
Well, that's good. I'm glad they've got it cordoned off like that. If they didn't do that, more than likely someone would get hurt if they ventured back into that area.
I think they would too, and it just brings me to realize something, that there was a Kalkaska County prosecutor found dead on a 2-track out there, and it wasn't too far from where this sighting and occurrence that we had happened. And it was caused the death of a heart attack, and I'm wondering if he had an encounter, and it terrified him so bad that he died.
I wouldn't be surprised. Everything that goes bump in the night is not dogman, of course, but given the history of that area, I wouldn't be surprised if, unfortunately, that did play out that way.
Yeah, it's within 15 miles of Sigma, which was another hot spot at one time. And it's almost like it's within the range. I believe these dogman creatures operate within the range. You know, like a bear or a big cat. A big cat, they claim, might have a 250-mile range that it roams, or a 100-mile range. That's what I think goes on with these dogman creatures, is they operate within a specified range.
Oh, sure. I think you're onto something there.
And something else that during the time that happened and now I've done is all the sightings here in Michigan, I've been plotting them on a Michigan map. And I'm noticing that it travels like a east-west, north-south range. But ironically enough, it's along major corridors, major highways, interstates, and there it would have ample food from roadkill and what have you, and it may all make sense to me that these areas are still wooded, it's got the food, they're probably still in that area.
Oh, I'm sure they are. Yeah, it's funny how they've got all that room to roam, but they stay so close to us. But like you said, we do offer so many sources of food for them. Whether you're talking about the roadkill you just mentioned or people leaving out trash that's so easily accessible, it only makes sense that they would hang around us like they do.
Yes, and I've seen the photos of them in town. There's one that comes to mind where it was standing by a lamppost. And that was taken back in the 30s. And it was odd that that photo was shot the same year that a gentleman up in the UP shot a giant wolf. And I came across that photo, and I put it out on the internet, this wolf. And, I mean, granted, this one wolf gutted weighed 183 pounds. So if it was entirely intact, it'd be over 200-pound wolf from tip to toe, standing upwards with 7 feet 11 inches in height. And its top of its head was 12 inches across. It makes me think that maybe people had seen that type of a wolf years ago, and when it went upright on its hind legs, surveying its prey, that some of the dogman sightings from the 30s and the 20s and prior to that may have been these big wolves.
You know, I've heard it postulated that a lot of these sightings that happen today are just cases of misidentification. Someone saw a timber wolf that stood up on its back legs, but I never have bought into that. I think it's just something just totally different from that. The creature that you saw that day, could there have been any way that it was a timber wolf that was standing up on its back legs, or was its morphology and dimensions different so that you know as a fact it could not have been a wolf?
No, there's no doubt in my mind that it was not a wolf. When I have my farm here in Fife Lake, I had 3 hybrids, and they were 75% of Alaskan timber wolf. And there's no way it could have ever been a timber wolf or a big coyote. You know, I saw the hybrids I had, and the male topped out at 125 pounds, and I'd seen him on his hind legs. And no, it wasn't a wolf. It wasn't a canine as we know it. This is something that's new. This is something that's completely different than anything I've ever experienced with wolves and things of that nature.
Like you just hit on, when a wolf stands up or a dog stands up, they obviously have a different build, totally different build, when you view them front on, for example, than a human would. Could you describe how what you saw that day looked when you were looking at it head on?
It was upright. Its front arms or legs were similar, but not totally like a man, you know, a human. The legs, you can see the definition of the human type thigh, but they narrowed down at the bottom of the leg where our ankle would be, and it didn't look like it was standing on an actual foot. It was a little bit different. That's the only way I can describe it.
So it looked like it had a stifle joint instead of a knee like a person would, the way a dog that's standing up on its back legs would, but it had much more impressive looking thighs than a dog would have. And then on the lower legs, it had hocks instead of a traditional flat-footed stance like a person, you're saying.
Right. That is what I'm saying is it looked like to me.
It's pretty unnerving, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, because you look at the average dog, and they can outrun a human. So my thought is, this thing really wanted to kill me. It could have. It could have caught me at any time. But it didn't. So I'm believing that it wasn't really me. It was intrigued with. I think it was David.
You looked through the scope and saw the round hit its chest. Could you describe, we never did get into how its chest and shoulder structure looked compared to a wolf or a man. What did you see that day as far as that goes?
Okay, it was almost like a combination of the two types of chest. There was some protrusion, like on a canine, but yet it was flat, almost ape-like in nature. It had dense hair, and a lot of it. So when I saw how much that it was real hairy, I said, no, this ain't no Bigfoot, no Bigfoot either. You know, that's what ran through my head. But it was a combination of humanoid canine chest.
How about its shoulders? As you know, when you look at a dog head on when it's up on its back legs, there are no shoulders. What did you see shoulder-wise?
Shoulder-wise, it was out a little rounded. You know, it was rounded out more than, it was almost bear-like when a bear stands upright.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, remember, too, the dogmen that are down in Kentucky, a lot of the people down there refer to them as bearillas because of how they look. So it's not like that would be unprecedented for a dogman to have a bearish type appearance. Are there any other points that I've missed, Larry, that you think are important to share before we close the show out?
The points I try to stress to everybody that I've talked to about encountering one of these creatures is not to go looking for it. Leave it alone. You go out there, if you have a can of mace or a knife or even a handgun or a rifle, don't try killing this thing because all you're going to do is antagonize it. All right? On the fact that I believe that they're paranormal is the fact that they can take the round and they can keep on coming. And, you know, you're messing with something that you don't know. And if you're a kid or a young person or a young adult from the inner city and you want to go hunt a dog, man, I'm going to tell you flat out, you have no business being in the woods. If you have no experience as a woodsman, if you don't know your tracks, don't know your directions, or anything like that, stay out of the woods. Don't go looking for it. Because you're going to find something and you're not going to like what you find. Because you're going to end up terrorizing yourself. You're going to get twisted around in the woods. And even if it doesn't get you, you may not find your way out and something else will.
Sounds like really good words of wisdom. There's one last question I want to ask you, or at least it's something I want you to elaborate on because of your past in the military. You more so than almost anyone would be the best person to ask about this. We're talking about these people that are going out and looking for something that they really don't know anything about, putting themselves in a very precarious position in the process. Could you explain the purpose of recon, the importance of good recon in the military, in a military situation, to the audience?
The purpose of good recon is having the knowledge of your enemy, knowing your enemy's movements, knowing where it's at, that type of thing. If you're going to try to hunt this creature, go into the area, take out 10 or 12 game cameras, and see if you can't come up with a strategic plan rather than just, okay, I'm grabbing my can of mace, I'm grabbing my gun, I'm going out there. No, you need to know what you're up against. You need to know what your odds are of survival. You know, there's just too many factors that are involved with hunting this type of a creature. You know, it'd be like almost trying to hunt a human that is out to kill you or you kill it. It's something that you don't know any of the variables about. That's something you wouldn't try to do.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on, sharing the details of that encounter as well as all that wisdom. I really do appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, Vic. I know a lot of people out there probably have seen my posts on Facebook and that, and think maybe I might be somebody who's just blowing smoke about this. They need to realize I've had the experience. I'm not a young person. I'm closer to being a senior citizen than anything else. And that they have to use extreme caution. I can't stress that enough. Recon and extreme caution if you're going to attempt to hunt. But what I'd like to see is I'd like to see one of these creatures captured alive. And we be able to study it and learn more about it. I would love to be able to find a nesting area and be able to videotape what they do, how they move, what their habits are. I mean, there's just too many unknowns about the dogman.
Thanks again, Larry, so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.